So Keir Starmer is meeting the French President Emmanuel Macron later on today as part of his efforts to reset Britain's relationship with the EU. Let's speak to Lord Peter Ricketts, former Permanent Under-Secretary of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and former British Ambassador to France. I think that was the start of this century. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for taking the time. Always a pleasure to see you. Is this the start of a new relationship with Europe?
Well, it's the beginning, Kay. This is the Reset Relations tour. Clearly, Germany yesterday, France today, no doubt Brussels shortly as well. It's about creating goodwill, lots of good intentions, lots of commitments to work closely together with Germany and France. So far, it's quite short on specifics. There are no concrete proposals for new projects, new initiatives countries are going to take together. There's going to be a new treaty with Germany, but it sounds to be in pretty general terms. And the relationship with France is already good. Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer had a dinner together at Blenheim Palace before the summer. I think the problem for him is he's also doing an awful lot of saying what it's not going to be. He's making it quite clear, no rejoining single market customs union, no youth mobility arrangement, at least for now. And we haven't yet had very much vision about what it is going to be. I think that's got to be the next stage. But it's obviously welcome that a British Prime Minister is now out and about in Europe, showing his counterparts that he's active, he's engaged, he's talking to them about the big issues, and in preparation for a proposal to go further in the relationship with the EU.
How did France view the UK at the moment? Does it matter which political party is in power?
Yes, it does matter. Things got very bad under the Conservatives, particularly with Boris Johnson and then Liz Truss. Emmanuel Macron really hated the kind of mockery and denigration that he got from Boris Johnson and Liz Truss's comments as well. And I think he felt he didn't have a reliable partner. Johnson was talking about walking back on the Northern Ireland Treaty he'd signed and so on. Now there's somebody who is a more normal politician, dependable, reliable, somebody I think Macron feels he can trust and work well with. It was already beginning to improve under Rishi Sunak. I think France sees Britain as an important ally in all the defence and security areas. They know we're the two most powerful armed forces in Europe. They know we're both working together on Ukraine, on the Middle East. We sit on the UN Security Council together. I think in the area of the the area of the EU, France is going to be quite cautious about ideas that the UK will come cherry picking, saying, we want to improve this or that bit of the deal we did with Europe, but not go as far as accepting all the disciplines. So I think they're going to be quite hard to convince on that while wanting to work closely with us bilaterally.
Growth is, as we're continually told, a big domestic priority for this Labour government. How do talks with the French and the Germans help that?
Well, this is one of the problems that Keir Starmer has. He can talk all he likes to the French and the Germans about trade and improving trade and reducing barriers. But in the end, it's at EU level that policy is set. This is an EU competence. And so although Keir Starmer has been saying that the tour is partly about trade, in practice, he's got to negotiate that with Ursula von der Leyen and the Commission in Brussels. So what this is doing, I think, is warming things up, is preparing the ground, is beginning to have those initial discussions. Worth also bearing in mind that anything the UK wants to improve trade, reduce barriers on that, will mean that the EU will have a little list of things they want as well. And it looks like on top of that is some easier youth mobility scheme, allowing EU students to come to UK universities and crucially pay the same price as a UK student at a UK university.
The British government keeps saying no to that. You've known this country and Paris, France, and the rest of Europe for a very long time. Do you think there'll be some negotiation there?
I hope so, yes. I've actually been rather surprised to see how firmly the new Labour government has shut that down, also shut down the idea of rejoining the Erasmus scheme, which gives life opportunities to thousands of young people to study, live, get to know other countries. I'm hoping that because Keir Starmer knows that this is a key ask for the EU, when they come to a negotiation about improving things on the trade and other relationships, perhaps he's holding it back as a gesture that he can make in response. The EU put an idea on the proposal before the summer for youth mobility, but that talked about 4-year stays for young people. It also included the idea that they could bring their dependents And I think the government wanted to make very clear that they are not going to go back to anything that looks like free movement, but they could at least use that as the basis for a negotiation and come out something with clearly was time limited, visa based, so not free movement, but did allow young people to live, work, study for a short period in another country and get to know it and all the benefits that come from that. I personally have experienced that in my life, and I hope the next generation of young people will be able to do that around Europe as well.
Do you think stopping the boats might come up today?
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. I mean, of course, Keir Starmer is very careful not to use that term, and he's quite right, because it's not going to be possible to stop the boats, but managing that. And yet this year's another year of pretty high arrivals of irregular migrants across the Channel. And it's crucial we work closely with the French. I think the previous government did well in cooperation with the French behind the rhetoric, and Keir Starmer's government has continued that. It's the only way to reduce the numbers over time is to work with the French and others against the trafficking gangs, to get our own act together. And I know the government have a proposal for a new border security command. That's the way to do it. I'm sure it'll be high on the agenda, along with other issues like Ukraine and the Middle East crisis.
A final thought from you, my lord, if you wouldn't mind. Could the current political crisis that we've seen play out in France have any sort of impact on any potential treaty?
No, I don't think so, at least not in the short term. When we come to negotiating with Brussels for an EU-UK treaty, it could do, because a new French prime minister would expect to have some say in EU relations. But the French president has pretty wide room for maneuver in everything to do with foreign policy, defense. So if we're talking about a security pact with the EU, I think the president has the prerogative there in France to lead French policy. It's much more difficult when it comes to domestic affairs in France. We're now 6 weeks into a period where France has only had a caretaker government. That's the longest period since 1953. And there's a strong feeling in France that this is drifting. I don't think that impacts on the EU's relationship, UK's relationship with France.
It's always good to see you, my lord. Thank you for taking the time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.